and welcome to this week's episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Okay, chores over and done with for the day, so I get to do something a little bit more, fun on a Sunday. Anyway, as per usual, a big thank you to everybody that watched last week's episode of the show, liked, commented. As per usual, I really appreciate all of those views and comments, and yeah, it's fun having you guys along. Quick note: all the tickets for this upcoming week's episode of the show, the tickets for this week's whiskey tasting evening are all sold. And as it's technically a Burns night tasting, I kind of resisted the urge to pick anything non-Scottish. Anyway, so we'll obviously be doing them like last year, once a month. So if you're interested in joining me in a bit more of an interactive forum, shall we say, next month, then I'll drop me a line, or I'll get the info up on the website in due course. Anyway, today's episode of the show, again, pretty much like last week. The show is about some samples that I received late November, early December, and I'm kind of, I suppose, in essence, playing slightly catch up with, and because nothing ever happens in the whiskey industry anyway in January, it does allow me to do that. So cast your mind back to 2019, a time long before we were using the words COVID-19 and pandemic and stuff like that. The media was hyping up rum. Rum was the next big thing. Gin had its day, and certainly, I guess, if Christmas of that particular year was any marker, then yeah, rum sales were pretty buoyant, and although it was fairly short-lived, because this year, well, the Christmas just gone, rum sales were pretty flat in actual fact, and gin had, as far as I could see, had a little bit of a renaissance. But obviously, you know, whiskey was still certainly for us anyway, the biggest seller. Although there was actually a bit more of an uptake in sales of vodka in actual fact this year, which was actually quite a surprise, considering vodka hasn't been in vogue for, oh, God knows how long now. But anyway, I digress. So anyway, throughout sort of like, you know, late sort of 2019 and through into 2020, up started popping all these new rum brands. And, well, I suppose if you were being cynical, you could say that there was a bit of bandwagon jumping, but I'm not cynical, and you know, the thing is, of course, like as we well know, if there's something becomes popular, doesn't matter whether it's a drink or whatever it is, you will get people saying, well, I want a bit of that, you know, and they will, you know, enter that marketplace. And I suppose the thing is with drinks, there's an awful lot of big brands, big companies, and it's all about marketing and sort of, you know, people sitting around boardroom tables quoting AC Nielsen bloody percentage increase in sales over the last 6 months, and it's all very dry. And a lot of these brands are mass market. The companies behind them want to make money, lots of money. They want to sell lots of stuff. And in essence, on the surface of it, the two brands that I'm looking at today are just that. They are, well, or are they? I mean, we'll get onto it. I mean, see, the thing is, and like I say, I don't wish to sound disingenuous, and you know, I'm pretty certain that the companies behind these two brands are wholly committed to sort of like, you know, the drinks industry. I mean, well, for example, Ron Larimar, for example, has been created by Angus Dundee. Angus Dundee, as you well know, owns Tomintoul, Glencadam, and you know, they are a significant company. You know, they're not going to sort of release a pile of rubbish, but I'm always kind of a little bit wary about these kind of rum brands that are not actually been released by the distillery. I mean, they often have a tendency to be, what's the word? Sometimes they tend to be rather poor quality. Other times they tend to be slightly dull, frankly. And this is often the tendency with mass market brands, that they do have a tendency towards dullness at the end of the day. They're not particularly inspiring, not interesting. Maybe these two are going to rock the boat. We should obviously get onto that when we start tasting. But so essentially, again, this is with these kind of things, and rum probably more so than anything else, there is this huge opacity. You really have to dig, I mean, even the distillery released brands, you have to kind of dig to find out, who produces them, what distillery they come from, because rum isn't like whiskey. It's not like a case of, your distillery releases just one whiskey under its own kind of name, or one rum. They have multiple different brands they sell. They're huge organisations, they're huge operations, these rum distilleries. They're not cutesy little distilleries. They are big factories at the end of the day, some resembling corrugated iron shacks, it has to be said, and they need to sell a product, and they're pumping the stuff out. Yes, they have their premium range, they have their cheapy range, they probably bottle stuff for other people, they sell it off in bulk, they do all of these kind of things, but anyway, I'm probably waffling off on a bit of a tangent, I suppose. So the question comes down to, do these two brands fit that kind of like mass market kind of pigeonhole, or are they slightly different? Are they something a little bit special? Obviously, we will find out, I guess. And so what we have here is, and ubiquitous lovely marketing material I got with them. Now, so Ron Larimar, which I'm going to look at first, and I'll obviously look at I'll be a bit more about the individual bottlings when I introduce the lineup. It's like I said, it's a new range, a new brand created by Angus Dundee, featuring rum distilled in the Dominican Republic. And that's it. That's all I know. And again, the name Ron Larimar apparently is named after a rare precious stone that's found in the Dominican Republic. Well, fair enough. Okay, I've got no issue with that. Now, as for where it comes from, of course they don't tell you that, and so you do some digging and you think, well, how many distillers are there in the Dominican Republic? And well, there's three essentially: Barcelo, Brugal, and Bermudez. So who knows? They're all big players. They're all big producers. It could come from any one of those distilleries. And you sort of, I suppose, part of you thinks, well, is that an issue that I don't know where it comes from? Because at the end of the day, what really matters is how good is the juice in the bottle. And so moving on to the second brand, it's called the Duppy Share. And I was just thinking, oh my God, I mean, it claims to be the UK's #1 selling premium rum, and it fully subscribes to the marketing business that I was talking about. I mean, the back of the sort of, the advertising is like, why stock Duppies? Rum is huge in growth. Premium rum sales are up 150% over the last 5 years. Rum drinkers are the most valuable shopper for retail as well. It's probably not strictly true, but it does go on to say about how consumers are more interested in quality materials, natural products, and give it its due, these allegedly contain natural products. And the other interesting thing is they're maybe not quite so opaque, because they do tell you where the spirit is being sourced from. And the spirit itself is being sourced from Foursquare. So we all know that Foursquare is a class distillery. Richard Seal is well known for producing great rum, and the other distillery is in Jamaica, and it's Worthy Park. And again, we know Worthy Park, and Worthy Park is quite interesting. I mean, it is not your typical Jamaican. It has that sort of slightly oily, Guyana-y kind of character, and I'm pretty certain I've done an episode of the show with Worthy Park, and so yeah, okay, right, the raw materials sound interesting, but I mean, you take for example, what's that? There was the Real McCoy. Now allegedly that's juice from Foursquare, and I don't know whether actually Richard Seal had any input into it, and it's got all this waffle about, you know, McCoy and the rum runners and all this kind of stuff. And the rum is boring, it's dull, it really is frankly quite dull, and you know, not interesting in the slightest. But anyway, I am digressing because I'm not tasting that today, we're tasting something completely different. So let's just look at the range, shall we? Right, we're going to kick off with the Ron Larimar range. So now I suppose the interesting thing about this is they've decided that they're going to do something a bit different, and each of these are finished in different casks. So what they've done is they've taken 5-year-old spirit, I'm guessing, well, probably 4.5-year-old spirit, I don't know the length of time the finishings were, probably shipped it from the Dominican to Scotland and finished the aging process in Scotland. So we have a 5-year-old Bourbon cask finish, all bottled at 40%, which again is a little bit of a shame because, again, you know, as we well know, the rum bottlers do tend to be sort of fixated with this 40% thing. But then again, it's all about the money. It's, you know, these are not particularly expensive bottlings. They're trying to get them, I think, at under 30 quid retail. The second bottling we'll be looking at is this is the Peated Malt, the Peated cask finish. So, interesting. Don't think I've ever come across a rum that's been finished in a peated whiskey cask, so should be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how the two work together. The next bottling we'll be looking at is the Oloroso cask finish, and then we're going to move on to the Pedro Ximinez cask finish. So, as we know, Angus Dundee, owners of both Glencairn and Tomintoul, have considerable amount of casks available to them of both sort of American oak sherry and peated, so sounds like it could be interesting. And moving on to the two Duppy share bottlings, this is just called Caribbean Rum, bottled at 40%. Like I said, it's a blend of Worthy Park and Foursquare. It's both pot and column distilled rum, and it's aged up to 5 years of age, and again it's not particularly expensive. And finally, no, not a peated one, it's a spiced one. Again, same source of material, so Worthy Park and Foursquare. Again, pot and column still, this time only aged for a minimum of 2 years and infused with pineapple, cola nut and Caribbean spices. Now, and again, like I said, the marketing waffle all seems to sort of you know, emphasize the fact that, you know, no artificial colours, no artificial sweeteners, which is good. Yeah, I can buy into that. Unfortunately, it's probably been filtered because it's been bottled at 40%. But okay, you know, we'll live with that, because, as I said, at the end of the day, it's all about how good is the juice in the bottle. So anyway, let's find that out, shall we? Right, okay, so let's kick off with the Bourbon cask finish. Let's see what there's on this end. Very, very, very oaky. Lots of vanilla, coconut, toffee. I mean, probably, I mean, these must have been only single-use casks, I imagine. I mean, there is a lot of oak. Possibly too much, to be honest with you. There is, now I am getting, underneath that, I am getting some, a little bit of light, probably column still dried fruit. Now I think that certainly from my investigation, 2 out of the 3 of those distilleries where they could come from both operate column stills. I couldn't find out anything about Bermudez whatsoever, about their stills anyway. You know, the information on rum distillery, it's all waffle. You know, there's very little real hard information. You know, you want to know what the casks they're using, but no, it's all about heritage and history and all this sort of stuff. You know, anyway, again, I'm waffling. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's very oaky. Yes, it's a bit cloud freezing. It's probably too much oak and not enough rum character, to be honest with you, but this is kind of giving me the benchmark, I suppose, anyway. Let's see what that's like. Quite light in body, so again it's kind of saying column still distilled spirit to me. Still pretty oaky. Again, it's all up front. It's oak, it's coconut, it's toffee, hazelnut, that kind of thing. There's a little bit of dried fruit on the mid palate, a little bit of sultana. It's in that sort of slightly higher toned, like I said, seems to me column still spirit. Although, as we know, you can take your plates out of your column still and produce quite a heavy style of spirit. But this certainly seems to be in the more lighter style of spirit. There's a little bit of lemon zest, and then the oak does grip a little bit on the finish. It gets a little bit dry, and there's a little bit of tannin. But again, it really is kind of like pretty much all about the oak, and I wouldn't say it's heavy-handed, but I feel it could have been a little bit more judicious, shall we say. Let's move on to the peated. Now, there's probably a bit of you think, oh, it's a bit of a weird way around of doing it, doing the peat before the sherry, but the thing is, this is basically peated American oak casks, so it theoretically should have more in common with the previous bottling, and it is, but it's less oaky. I'm guessing that these peated casks have probably been a little bit more reused, and so I'm not getting so much emphasis on the oak, although it is slightly vanillaed. There's more rummy fruits, more dried fruit, lime. Obviously this lime sort of lemony kind of citric note is obviously a key to who's produced this, and unfortunately I don't really know those particular distilleries very well at all to be able to say, yep, that's definitely Bruegel or what have you. But so, yeah, okay, this is probably a little bit more successful. I'm certainly getting more rum character, and there's a little bit of smoke just in the background. It is quite intriguing. I think this is quite successful. This has worked because the oak is not so oppressive. There's a bit of tobacco leaf, a bit of earth. It's certainly showing a little bit more complexity, and maybe that is because of the peat notes coming through. It's kind of adding another layer, another dimension to it. Anyway, let's see what that's like. Right, it shows more peat right off the bat. I'm getting a lot of peat right up front. Earthy, rich, loamy peat. Again, the oak is not too heavy, so I'm getting more of the rum character. I'm getting the lighter column still dried fruits. Again, slight touch of lemon zest, balanced vanilla. It's a lot longer. It's less kind of biting and less grippy, shall we say, on the finish. It's got a better length to it. The sort of the subtle sweetness of the dried fruits kind of just carries on, and that thread of peat and smoke just kind of slowly dissipates, and that's actually really quite pleasant. Yeah, all right, I would have liked to have seen a bit more in complexity. I would like to have seen a bit more age, but then we're talking more money, and this is obviously where they've aimed this particular bottling at. So you kind of like have to go, right, well, we'll have to just work with what we've got. And so far, yep, that works pretty well, I think. Right, okay, so this is the Oloroso sherry cask finish. Now, you might think, well, that's a bit weird, finishing an Oloroso cask, but I mean, there are distilleries, rum distilleries do use them, sherry casks do crop up quite regularly. I mean, not, I mean, you've got Richard Seal using all manner of weird and wonderful casks. Diplomatico certainly use some sherry casks. Certainly, I think certainly in the vintage bottlings or the vintage bottling they do. But anyway, I'm digressing. Let's see what those are like. Oh, that's a chunky Oloroso monster. It's juicy, it's soft, it's polished. It really is all about the sherry. There's a touch of dark toffee. I can get a little bit of rummy notes. I get a little bit of the dried fruit. Again, I'm picking up on that slight lime, lemon, citric note now, and I think unless I'd have tasted the other two prior to this, I probably would have missed it because it is really subtle. Yeah, the oak is quite toasty as well. Not only is it quite heftily sherry, it's quite toasty. And again, there's some dark chocolate. I mean, it's again, this knows if you like sort of like big sherry monsters, you're going to love. It does kind of lack, shall we say, some complexity. It has to be said, but it's clean. Let's see what the parts like. Rich, dark, Oloroso. Yes, the dried fruit comes through and you get that kind of rummy feeling on the mid palate. But again, it's all really dominated by the sweet Oloroso. There's some coffee, there's some spice, there's some chocolate. Again, a little toastiness. Dark coffee. Good length. It's got a good length. But again, it does lack some complexity. It is very much, wood and a bit of spirit, really. And yeah, okay, I can see it. I can see you have to say, well, it's only 5 years old, and to be bluntly honest with you, there's very few occasions that I've come across a rum that's less than 8 years old that has complexity. They just don't have it, even though if they've been matured in the Caribbean and what have you, and they go on about how it's hotter and how it's double the time of effectively of a single malt, so a 5-year-old has probably got the complexity of a 10-year-old whiskey. Well, personally, I think that's a load of rubbish. Absolute rot. Yes, they do mature a bit more quicker and they probably pick up more oak notes, but just to say that is yeah, anyway. But I've often found that anything less than 8 years old is a blender. Stick it in cocktails, that kind of thing. So it really doesn't have the complexity, and I'm afraid, although these are pleasant, they don't really have the complexity. Right, okay, let's move on to the PX finish. Let's see what the nose gives us on this one, shall we? Well, I don't think you'd be too surprised if I told you it's very sherry. I mean, here we go. I mean, Angus Dundee have obviously set out this stall on this, and it's all going to be about the oak. And, well, okay, fine. No problem with that whatsoever. It's an interesting thing to do. I will give it that, but it just could have been more interesting, I suppose. It could have been more intriguing. They could have used older spirit, but like I said, that would have put the price up, etc. Maybe they will do so. Maybe they'll go, okay, this was our entry level, this was our mass market brand. We're now going to push on and do something a bit more interesting, use older spirits, all that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe, it's something to think about, board members. If they watch the show, they're probably not. They're probably switched off long before now, saying, "Well, this guy knows bugger all." Anyway, back to the PX cask. PX sherry, treacle, grapey, etc. Probably even less kind of rum character coming through on this one, I can tell you. But again, I pick up on that slight column still note and that little bit of citrus, Anyway, let's see what that's like. PX, grapey, figgy, treacly. Yeah, I do get a bit of the rum notes sort of coming through more on the finish. In actual fact, the kind of the oak tails off to a certain extent, allowing that kind of rum note to just come through a little bit more on the finish. It's very soft, it's very mouth-filling, it's not hugely complex, etc., etc. It is what it is, as I say. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Duppy share. So, I mean, these samples just appeared out of nowhere. I mean, I can't even think of who distributes them now. I do buy from them, but you know, I was just sort of like looked at them, pulled them out of the packet, and went, "What the hell is this?" Anyway, preconceptions aside, let's just see what the juice is like. You know what, that is actually quite intriguing. Well, I suppose it's intriguing insofar that I get a huge whack of Worthy Park up front. It's got that heavy, oily, congenery, kind of herbal, not quite agricole, but really sort of herbal, slightly fainty, raw sugar cane, molasses. Again, you know, I'm getting both column still and I'm getting a little bit of pot still. Not a huge amount of pot still, it has to be said, because obviously that was the more expensive of the two spirits. So it is more column still. But you know what? I mean, this you could argue is probably, even though they claim it's the world, you know, or the UK's #1 selling brand at the moment, it's a little bit left field. It has to be said, you know. So okay, I can kind of go with that. I mean, this is not your Diplomatico, your Eldorado, your Ronza Kappa, you know, your rich, slightly sweeter style of rum, which a lot of people seem to love. This has got a little bit more proper rum character, it has to be said. Yeah, and I kind of quite like it. I must admit, I'm a little not quite so keen on the whole branding and imagery is a little bit. But anyway, you know, the juice smells good. Yeah, I can cope with that. And like I said, it does seem to be more about the Worthy Park than the Foursquare. It has to be said. But anyway, let's see what the palate's like. Okay, I'm getting a little bit more of the Barbadian character on the palate. It's got a bit more roundness, a bit more fullness to it. But there's still that edgy Worthy Park note coming through. Slightly herbal again. Underripe green banana, bit of apricot, touch of cocoa powder, a little bit of oak. A little bit fainty on the finish, I'll give you that. I mean, it is, again, I mean, only around about 5 years old. And I think sort of on their own, I think maybe the sort of component parts may well have been less complex. But, you know, putting them together, and they are quite, not totally opposite ends of the spectrum, but, you know, they've certainly got a difference of character to sort of make something overall a little bit more complex than what ideally it probably is. So in essence, I think, yeah, I don't think that's too bad at all. Okay, and let's finish off with the spice. Now, you know, you know what I think about spiced rums. Most of them are an absolute and utter abomination. All they are is just sort of like, you know, alcohol to carry a load of horrendous spices. But anyway, you know, the Foursquare spiced is quite pleasant. I mean, anyway, let's see what those goes on this end, shall we? Okay, so it's quite subtly spiced. Again, I'm getting quite a bit of the Worthy Park oiliness. I'm certainly getting pineapple. I'm getting cola, pepper, a little bit of a light sort of, I wouldn't quite say musty herbalness, but sort of, you know, kind of potpourri sort of ish, kind of musty herbal kind of notes. Yeah, all right, I'm not selling it very well, am I? It has to be said. I think on the whole, it's certainly not uber sweet for a start. I mean, it certainly kind of does what they say it does. It's obviously got a very natural character, a natural sweetness. You can smell some rum. All right, it's not just all about the spices at the end of the day. So I suppose from grudgingly, I guess, from that kind of point of view, it's it kind of works. Anyway, let's see what the password. Now the palate is quite sweet, but it's got that kind of, it's not a sugary sweetness, it's a more naturally derived sweetness. I'm certainly getting sweet pineapple. The Worthy Park edginess kind of like sort of balances that up to a certain extent. Gives it a little bit of menthol, a little bit of spice, again a little bit of cola, a little bit of almost kind of like coffee toffee kind of notes right on the finish, maybe a touch of ginger. Okay, it's okay. I mean, you know, it's yeah, it's considerably better than a lot of spiced rums, I can tell you that for a start. Reaches your heart. Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show. Firstly, a big thank you to the distributors for the samples for this week's episode of the show. Like I said, I'm pretty certain Angus Dundee have stopped watching now, so anyway, you know, they weren't too bad. They are what they are at the end of the day. They hit the price point. They're mass market. They're not dreadful. They are overly oaky. But I think the light here is the peated cask finish. It just shows you that if you just dial down the oak a little bit, be a bit more judicious with that, you're starting to get something really intriguing. And I guess if the raw materials were a little bit older, maybe a little higher in ABV, you know, I think this is a good starting point, and I think it could be expanded upon. Whether a company decide to do that or not, of course, I've got absolutely no idea. I'd like to think that they would do so after they've established the particular brand, that they will go on and build on that. And like I said, you know, just do some more things that are probably more suited to the likes of you and I that have got, shall we say, and I hate to, this sounds horribly snobby, doesn't it, but we've got a bit more of a refined palate, I suppose, at the end of the day. These are fine for people that really are not that concerned, shall we say, and again, God almighty, I just sound like a complete bloody snob. I'm not, honestly, you know where I'm getting at. Anyway, the Duppy share, okay, horrible name, can't stand the name, awful, don't like the branding, but the juice in the bottle isn't too bad at all. So, you know, if you were thinking of buying a bottle of these, you know, it's on, you know, on your local shop shelf at a reasonable price, then you won't be disappointed by them. I think they're quite balanced. I like the fact they've taken these two quite differing styles of rum and blended them together and done, I think, a fairly good job of it. So yeah, there you go. That's this week's episode of the show in the bag. I hope you found it entertaining. I certainly have, anyway. And I've probably, you know, annoyed some people. So you know, it's always a good one, isn't it? Anyway, until next time. Good afternoon and good ramming.